Welcome to Phonogenics 101, a Riotboy production hosted by Jeremy Gloff. The podcast where people who love music discuss albums track by track. Please hit subscribe, and if you'd like to support this podcast, patreon.com/Jeremy Gloff or Venmo @Jeremy Gloff. And now, on to the music. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Phonogenics 101. We're having a nice little laid-back podcast tonight to talk about Christine McVie's 1984 second solo album. Big daddy of our group, Mick Fleetwood, a.k.a. Jim Miller, is down in Africa recording The Visitor, so he couldn't be with us. Rick Vito is bowling over in Oregon, so he cannot be with us. But we have our Lindsey Buckingham, Steve, Dr. Larner, and our Sharon Ceylani, Alicia, and I don't know who I am. I'm Stevie McPerfect. Well, this is not an interesting story about this Christine McVie 1984 album. I feel like 1984 was like right when like the synthesizers were really coming out, and you started having like the Madonna with Like a Virgin. And that was started like a couple years later to have Janet Jackson with Control when things became really pop. But in 1984, a lot of the 70s megastars were still releasing albums and they were still charting pretty high. So a Christine McVie solo album coming out in 84, that was a pretty decent sized hit. They did play these videos on MTV a lot. I remember seeing the videos a lot. I feel like everything kind of changed in 85. Like a lot of those 70s people kind of weren't around as much. Of course, Fleetwood Mac came back with Tango in the Night and Stevie had Rock a Little. But Stevie drastically changed her sound in 85. There's a big change between 82 Stevie Nicks and 85, both in sound and in height of hair. An interesting story about the Christine McVie 1984. My dad moved to Florida when I was a kid, and my parents got divorced, and my aunt and uncle and my cousins, we all drove down to visit my dad in Florida. I remember the adults were playing the new Christine McVie solo album, and my ears perked up. I was interested in it. I would have been 9 years old, and they're like, "You're not going to enjoy this. This is adult music." And I'm like, that was actually the music I liked and still love. But just before this podcast, one of my cousins is getting married. So I just picked up my aunt and uncle that drove me down to Florida in 84 from the airport right before this podcast where we talk about Christine McVie. So it's interesting that Aunt Joni and Uncle Tom seem to always be part of my life indirectly when it comes to the Christine McVie 1984 solo album. So, Steven, what do you remember from when this came out? Do you remember hearing it on the radio or anything?
Oh, yeah. I think this is the very first thing I heard from the Fleetwood Mac trio.
Okay.
Artists, yeah. I knew this before Fleetwood Mac and before Stevie Nicks.
Really?
Yeah. What is that effect called when somebody remembers something a different way than what reality was?
The Mandela effect. Or Mandela, yes. However they pronounce it.
Now, until this week, I didn't realize she had 2 singles from this album.
Oh.
Like, what is the song we were talking about, the big hit? You Got a Hold on Me?
Got a Hold on Me, and then Love Will Show Us How was the other single.
I thought the video for Love Will Show Us How was the other song. So when I watched it, I was like, what is going on? Like, I've seen this video 100 times, but this is a totally different song than what I remember.
Oh.
See, that was so bizarre to me.
I do remember both videos getting a lot of rotation. Of course, Got a Hold on Me was the bigger hit. But yeah. It's been years since I've seen Love Will Show Us How. Isn't there like explosions and rocket ships? And it's very 80s with Christine McVie just kind of chilling and playing her piano in the center.
Yeah. So I remember Stevie Nicks in an interview talking about watching the video and how much she loved Christine's sense of humor and how that really. Yeah.
The sisterhood was around even back then. Because you certainly never heard Stevie Nicks talking about her appreciation of Go Insane, did you?
She probably never listened to it.
She probably never listened. I bet she did. She wanted to know if there's any songs about her. I feel like she's listening to everyone. She's like, I want to see what he's saying about me.
Could be.
Maybe not.
Could be.
So, Alicia, you're new to this album. What was kind of your impression of it, digging into it?
Um, Music's fantastic. Lyrics, well, we have no songbird off this record. But otherwise, it's a very, very solid record. I've enjoyed listening to it in the car. And then I've been enjoying listening to it here in the house the last couple nights. So
The thing that I think is cool about this album is Christy McVie's never been one to really, really wildly deviate from her sound. You know what I mean? She always kind of keeps it in her pocket. But there are just enough little variations in the Christy McVie formula, or whatever you want to call it. I feel like formulas has such a negative connotation, and I don't mean it to have one here. But I feel like she adds just enough spice to the meal here to keep it interesting throughout a whole album. Even in 1984, when this came out, Christine was always understated. Like, she never, had a big persona, even with her solo career. It just seemed like she was just trying to hang out with, let's hang out with Steve Winwood and Eric Clapton and just make an album for the hell of it. Fleetwood Mac's in between projects. So I feel like she never had these lofty goals to be a huge solo superstar. And clearly she didn't enjoy the attention of being alone. This album, I think, reminded her that she likes being part of an ensemble, because she didn't release another album for how long? Almost 20 years, right? 20 years till the next one. And the only reason she did the next one because she was at home, and that's the story for a couple months from now. But yeah, this was definitely a hit. I guess I can look on Wikipedia right here to see what the chart positions were. In the US, I went to number 26 on the chart. So it charted around the world. In Canada, it was 39. In Sweden, it went to 19. Let's look at the singles to see how they charted. Got a Hold on Me charted. Billboard Hot 100 at 10. So Got a Hold on Me was actually a top 10 hit.
You have to take into consideration how much more difficult it was to chart back then.
Yeah.
Much more competitive, and you had to sell a lot more units than what you do now.
Everyone bought the 45s. Love Will Show Us How went all the way up to number 30. So Interesting. This was definitely a hit album. And then, of course, everyone knows, that's a Fleetwood Mac fan, knows the history that, Fleetwood Mac reunited and did Tingle in the Night. And it's interesting because after Christine McVie did this album, the next batch of songs she would have written were the Tingle in the Night songs. And I think a lot of people feel that's her strongest batch of songwriting. I mean, or if not her strongest, a really strong one. Like, you have Little Lies, Everywhere, which are both iconic songs. I feel like Isn't It Midnight is just as good as those songs. I love those songs. So I feel like Christine rocked the 80s just as much as she did the 70s. Really consistent. I actually loved a lot of her stuff on Behind the Mask. I can't remember if you guys did, but
I did. I think her writing was consistently good for the rest of her career.
Yeah. I remember when we did the Time album, like, we all listened to it live. I never heard the album, and every Christine McVie song that came out, I'm like, holy shit, this is really good. And I went back and listened to the album a lot. Like, it was Jim Miller that talked us into doing that shit. And good call, because I fell in love with the album. I love it. I love it. So
you're a Becca Bramlett stalker.
Yeah, I tried to email Becca Bramlett on Facebook. Okay, if anyone's listening, I'm looking for Becca's first solo album, What's in It for Me. That was only available, I believe, in her live shows. I will pay anything for it. I'll pay $50, anything to complete my collection. Thank you.
Your private show?
Yes.
There you
Anything.
go.
Anything. All right. Well, I'm going to show my little collection here. I have the original CD issue of the Christy McVie. Last week, Rhino Records actually re-released the album, a remastered version, which is a digipack or a wallet or whatever they call it. And then, of course, because it's Christine, I have the original vinyl. So, it's always interesting, Christine's album covers, because the first one she did, she's just sitting in a wicker chair in the middle of the woods. So, where is she next? Oh, there just happens to be a grand piano on top of a mountain. Like,
she has good luck finding those everywhere, doesn't she?
Yeah.
In the desert.
Oh, yeah. So, Christine's walking through the woods and she just happens to find a wicker chair. She's walking up a mountain. There just happens to be a grand piano, and she's just happens to be wearing a cape. So
I'll sit for a bit and play a tune.
the back cover, of course, is a close up of her cape. So, do you guys have anything to say about the general album before we go into the track by track? All right. Well, the album opens.
Well, I think it grows on you.
Yeah,
it's new to me as well. So, the more you listen to these tunes, things you might pass up on the first hill, the first listen kind of stick out.
So you knew the singles, but you didn't know the album.
Right.
And Alicia, this was all new to you. Did you know that Got a Hold on Me? Did you hear that song ever?
No.
Okay, because it's interesting because it was just as big of a hit as I'd say like Leather and Lace or, some of Stevie's singles. It charted just as high.
It was big.
It's really interesting because, if I talk to anybody, everybody knows Stevie, and I think one or two people would know about Buckingham's solo career, but I don't know really anybody who knows McVie's.
It's interesting because the single from this, which was a huge hit, and I'm actually was invited to be on a podcast about one-hit wonders that are forgotten, and the Christy McVie song is on there. Or maybe not one-hit wonders, but songs that were big hits that they don't play today. So I feel like it's going to be a Fleetwood Mac episode. I think it's They Got a Hold on Me. I think If Anyone Falls, you never hear that song outside of being a Stevie Nicks fan. It's not something that you hear. And it was a huge hit at the time. It was everywhere.
Alicia, for reference, when did you start listening to popular music?
But the late 90s is when I became a teenager.
Okay. I was just curious as to when you came in and reference when that song came out, because they didn't play it much after its initial run.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
Let me put it this way. The year I was born is when Tango came out.
We're all like,
my granddaughter.
Yeah. You're no longer Sharon Ceylani. You're damn Jessica Nix. You're Jessica Nix with your little picture in Street Angel. I'm just kidding. So yeah, it's very interesting that Got a Hold on Me, huge hit in the 80s. Not something that people, and if people, I think there have been times I'll walk through the supermarket and I'll hear it on the intercom. That song exists in that world, but as far as something that people know that's a go-to, totally forgotten. I think it's like on, Pandora playlists that they play in stores. But that must, be curated by bigger music fans than the general public.
Yeah, this album does sound of its time, too.
Yeah.
I heard little bits of other songs in it. I could hear Bosom Buddies. I can hear Billy Joel just in the instrumentation on the album, the production.
That's really interesting. And it's interesting, Christine's 3 solo albums really do span, the first album is so freaking 70s, late 60s, early 70s. This album is so 1984. And I wouldn't say that her last album is so 2000s, but the way she recorded it is so 2000s, just using a kind of a laptop in a barn and that home recording thing. I love that album. I think me and Steven, Alicia, I can't wait to hear In the Meantime, because it's just so good. And so, people don't really know it. And, of course, Christine released Songbird last year before she passed away. Or was it this year? I lose track of the years. Last year. Yeah, it was last year. And she took half the songs from this 1984 album, then half the songs from In the Meantime, and totally remixed them with new instrumentation. So I think Glenn Johns produced it. The same guy that did Street Angel, infamously with Stevie Nicks.
Interesting.
Who had a terrible experience, went back and worked on Christine with the last project she ever did. It was weird because in an interview, she's like, "Oh, this is my swan song." I'm like, "Oh, no, it's not." But then she actually did pass away. So it really was her swan song, and brought to you from the same guy that brought us The Forgotten Chimpanzee.
It does make you wonder if celebrities have, like, and I'm sure they do, a lot of physical problems that we have no idea.
Right.
It's all hidden, until it's too late. And then you're like, oh, they suffered from this for years, or
Right.
go
I
through
feel
all
like
the stuff we do.
I feel like she was aware for a lot longer. She didn't even let Steve, like the Fleetwood Mac people didn't even know she was sick. I feel like she kept it really close to her family.
Her best.
Yeah. Do you see that she just uh I guess her brother inherited all the money when she passed away, and that's cool. And then she
Oh,
donated
no.
a lot to charity.
I don't even know what happened to her,
It
besides
was,
that she died.
it was cancer.
Really?
Yeah, I
Did
believe
they
so.
say what kind?
Was it bone cancer? I might be giving wrong information. Maybe Google it because I don't want to put
Okay.
fake news on Phonogenics 101,
Gotcha.
especially with our beloved Christine McVie, who I just adore so much. So, Alicia, let me say this before we go into the track by track. Did listening to this album change your opinion of Christine McVie at all, or kind of maintain your opinion? Like, and maybe that's a stupid question, but like,
Well, it's kind of hard because the more I did, Christine, for me, it seems to be a slow burner, but it has a
Mhm.
lot to do with, I like Stevie because she's an atmosphere sort of
Right,
artist. I mean, she, um, Buckingham is good. I feel like he's in the middle of the road of the two of them because he can really do a good rock pop song like Christine,
right,
but his is very music heavy.
right.
Yeah, he's not lyric. He's not somebody I would ever scream as the greatest lyricist in
Right.
the world. But musically, he's fantastic, and he's also, and you can tell with all the production, he does all the different production
Oh,
techniques.
his bag of tricks.
Yes, yes. And Christine just seems to be a straight shooter
Hmm.
when it comes to writing and performing and recording. So she doesn't have the bag of tricks. There isn't usually tons of studio magic. We all went in, we played the songs, we did some overdubbing and vocals, and voila.
Right.
So this record didn't seem it seems the same thing. The only thing that really impressed me is she pulled in quite a list
Right.
crowd.
So we have Lindsey Buckingham on a lot of the tracks. We have Eric Clapton playing guitar. We have Steve Winwood. Todd Sharp's on there. Wasn't he in the Zoo? Or am I imagining things? George Hawkins. Uh, Ray Cooper. Yeah, this was an A list. And it
So
was interesting because when this came out, I guess I was 9 years old and I didn't know who Steve Winwood was. Like, I know he was in Traffic and he was around in the 60s, but he hadn't come back with Higher Love and made like his big comeback yet. So I think I might have heard Steve Winwood first on this album. And it's like, oh, who's that guy? And then, of course, he made a huge comeback just a year or two later with all those hits. Valerie, Higher Love. He had a lot of hits.
Now, was he big in the 70s?
Yeah, because he was the lead singer of Traffic.
I've never
And
heard of
he
that.
was in Spencer Davis group also, the give me some love. And so he was a big English musician in the late 60s, 70s. All right.
I mean, so that was the kind of the thing. This one was different because it wasn't all the blues like the last one. But this
Right.
reminds me more of Fleetwood Mac, what
Right.
she kind of does with Fleetwood Mac and what I like.
Very
So
80s pop rock for sure.
yes.
And I feel overall it's a pretty radio friendly album from beginning to end. Like, there's no big experiments. There's no like, I feel like Christine got kind of most experimental on Tusk, and those songs took a long time to grow on me. Now I love them. Steven, you didn't like her Tusk songs, did you? Like Brown Eyes and Never Make Me Cry.
Oh,
I love those because I think that's just her kind of riding her wings a little bit. Did you like those songs, Alicia?
The one that really sticks out in my mind is the Honey High.
Oh, I love Honey. It's so deceptively simple with that
So I
harmony
mean,
at the end.
yeah, the harmonies are just fantastic. And I'm trying to think. her and Buckingham did like 8, 9 songs a piece off. That one's the one that always sticks out for me in Tusk.
On my new album, I just released an album and I have a song on there, and I totally like. I want it to be like my. I don't know if anyone listening besides me would know it, but I want it to kind of be my tribute to Christy McVie. And I actually like fade in the song and fade it out just like Honey High. They have a little middle section, so it's totally like my secret little tribute to Honey High, one of my favorite Christy McVie songs. All right, well, the 1984 album. What do you guys think of the cover?
The cover?
That's the first time I've ever seen it.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's pretty sharp.
Very
What?
Christine, very good branding there, I guess you could say, even though that wasn't quite a word that was used in the 80s. But
I love grand pianos.
yeah, she's just so cool, man. She was the coolest. All right, so the album opens with the song that was, I believe, the second single of the album, Love Will Show Us How. Played on MTV a lot, went to number 30. Great opener for the album. It rocks a little harder. I feel like it's a little more polished than something Christine would have done with Fleetwood Mac. I don't know if polished is the right word, but a little more, maybe more 80s rock. What do you guys think of this song?
I mean,
I feel like all these songs, like, there's not a ton to say about them. I just love, I don't know, it's a good song to listen to, drive, roll down the windows, feel good. And that's what I want out of a Christine McVie song.
yes. And then I'm over here having to think because this really flowed together.
Right.
So it reminded me of our Buckingham discussion last
Oh,
month.
right. Where we didn't know which song was which.
Yes.
The thing I love about the Christy McVie album is you get to hear her harmonize with people other than Buckingham and Nix. So it kind of reminded me of some of the sounds we'd hear on Behind the Mask, with having some of the different kind of male harmonies behind her that weren't Lindsay. So that,
yes.
I don't know, I felt like this was kind of a precursor for some of the stuff that we heard from her on Time and Behind the Mask, which I love her stuff on there. And you know, this is an album that I'd really necessarily give, I think I'd probably give thumbs up, or at least almost thumbs up to all the songs. So, you know, maybe we'll just briefly touch on them all, because I don't think we're not talking Shakespeare here, but we're talking a good solid pop rock album from 1984.
Yes.
So any other thoughts on Love Will Show Us How? All right, well, the challenge is kind of a mid-tempo. It's a little bit darker. We have some whispery background vocals from Lindsey Buckingham, which I really love. I love Christine's because it's interesting, even though she's kind of the brightest of the three, and as far as like not being heavy and dark and dense, she still kind of has a wisp of darkness in some of her songs. And I feel like the challenge does have a little bit of a melancholy. No matter what you do, love is a challenge, and I can attest to that one. Amen, Christine. So, yeah, did you guys have any thoughts on this one?
I do not.
All right, it's all good. We'll just zip through the
We're gonna
tracks.
have to edit Jim in here.
I know. Jim will give us a little synopsis. And some albums, there's just not a lot to say. It's a lot of times it's just about the vibe or the feel, you know what I mean? And that's kind of how I always felt this album was. I don't think any group of scholars could get together and have an 8-hour discussion about this album, and that's not a bad thing.
Mhm.
Now the third track, So Excited, I always love this one because it had a little bit of a different feel for me. It starts with the acoustic guitar, then it kind of goes into that halftime thing that reminds me a lot of some of the stuff Christine did pre-Fleetwood Mac. And I remember my aunt and uncle playing this song. I remember being a kid, listening to it and being like, I like this song, even though this album's for the adults. We were right in Orlando, Florida. I remember the moment clear as day. Did you guys like this one?
I do. Was Lindsay involved in the production of this song?
Let me take a
Did he
look.
plan it? Because this to me had a very Fleetwood Mac kind of sound.
No, do you know who co-wrote it? Billy Burnett, who's one of the people from Behind the Mask.
I know him, yeah.
So it's interesting that, you know, that I bring him up because he was actually on the album. So Lindsey Buckingham does play guitar on So Excited. Yep, he's one of the guitar players on this song.
Looking at my liner notes too, it says Becca Bramlett sang background.
She did not.
I know, I'm pulling your
Oh,
leg. Sorry.
I'm like, what? No. Still looking for that Becca Bramlett solo album, by the way, if anyone has it. And I love, we have a little bit of an accordion from Chris in there in the fade out. This is just a great feel good Christine McVie romp. And once we get to her albums like Penguin and stuff, there's some stuff on those early albums where she kind of has a similar feel on the piano, the more up tempo. And I love it. I feel like every song she left us is kind of like a little treasure. So did you remember this one, Alicia?
I do. I do remember the I'm so excited. And it's all the
Right.
layering of vocals. So it's
It's interesting because the Pointer Sisters did have I'm So Excited out at the same time. So everybody was excited in 1984.
Huge. Alicia, you know that song by the Pointer Sisters?
well, I thought the Pointer Sisters were from like the 40s and 50s.
No, they're from in the 70s, they did camp stuff from the 40s. So they kind of brought it into the 70s. Then in the 80s, they did a lot of pop synth stuff.
Okay.
I'm a big Pointer Sisters fan, by the way. I would totally do a Pointer Sisters Phonogenics. Don't threaten me with a good time. My friends always, there's that video for Jump for My Love where at the beginning, like the three sisters turn their head and Ruth, the one that was kind of like with the low voice, like turns into gives like the bitchiest look. Like everyone's like, "That's you, Jeremy. You're
She was my
Ruth."
favorite one.
Ruth was.
Yeah, I liked her.
You would not want to meet her in a dark alley if she was mad at you.
No, she's a big woman.
No way to control it. On one of the Pointer Sisters album, there's a backup part she does that's really noble. It says Ruth, the real thing, in parentheses. All right, so next we have One in a Million, which is a duet with Steve Winwood, who we said would come back in a couple years with a huge hit. And this is the one that has, Eric Clapton's on the challenge. He's on song number 2. So we got to mention Eric Clapton being on the challenge before we move on. And Eric Clapton, people still knew who he was in the 80s, right? And then of course he came back in the 90s with Tears in Heaven and kind of rose to prominence, but he never was out of prominence, I feel like.
I didn't know him until his 90s comeback.
Oh, really?
Just because of the I listened to. I wasn't familiar with classic rock, really.
Okay. All right, so One in a Million.
Love the bass.
Yeah, that I feel like that almost a little bit touched on more of the blues
Maybe.
of Christine. You know what I mean? Like she had that organ on there. It was really kind of like a slow stomping, and then it built. Yeah, what do you think of this song, Alicia?
Well, okay, so I knew it was either this one or Ask Anybody, but it was fun because it had kind of that pull.
Right. That dun, 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 dun.
Yes. And it kind of broke it up as well, which was nice.
Christine's vocals sound great on this album and on this song. I feel like she just had a good time recording the album. If you go on YouTube, there's a concert that she did with her solo band, which was probably like the one and only time she did a solo concert. I don't think she did a lot of dates for the album.
I wonder if Bad Journey grew out of this.
I know. It does kind of have that feel a little bit. I feel like Christine wrote those like I just want to be at home songs all the way from like Homeward Bound on Bare Trees through Bad Journey. Like every couple of years she was talking about how much she hates being out of her house.
I have to go backwards and listen to her older Fleetwood Mac stuff.
Okay. Well,
there's a lot of good material in there.
Yeah, I like those early Fleetwood Mac albums just as much as the classic ones, honestly. The first couple albums, the blues ones, I didn't love them. But once we got to Then Play On through like Kiln House, Future Games, Bare Trees, Penguin, Mystery to Me, and Heroes Are Hard to Find I love them. There's songs that I love on each of those albums. And Alicia, if we do tackle those albums on this podcast, I'll be very interested to hear what Alicia thinks of some of the, like Danny Kerwin or Bob Welsh, people that were in the band and left, because they wrote such great songs too. Some of Danny Kerwin or Bob Welsh stuff I like just as much as Lindsey Buckingham, and Christine McVie was there through it all, so that's what makes it kind of awesome.
Sounds
right.
like I'm gonna have to go back to the record store.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, we have a little time before we get to that one. Well, side one ended with Ask Anybody, which had that kind of dun, 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 dun. It had such a it was very 1984. I loved it. This is another song. I love it. Like, it's just, I actually played a show in Orlando to support my new album last week, and I just drove home down I-4 with my windows down. I played this album 3 times in a row, and kind of like driving by Disney and just driving with the windows down and seeing all the trees. Like, listen, it's like a fine glass of wine, this album is. Because really, to me, all the Christine songs, it doesn't get old to me. It's, like I said, it's not Shakespeare, but hearing Christine in the context without being broken up by like Lindsay being a maniac or Stevie being dramatic or whatever, like just a pure Christine album is a vibe. It's totally a vibe. And I just think this is one of those albums they can just put on and kind of almost like a Sade album. Like you just put it on and kind of just chill. Did you guys like this song?
yes.
I don't remember it, to be honest.
Okay. Well, side 2 opens up with a song that was the big top 10 hit. Got a Hold on Me, a classic Christine McVie composition. Great hook, huge hit. Alicia, when you listened to it, did it stand out to you like a single, or did it? So it felt like a hit.
Yeah, driving today, I repeated this song 2 or 3 times in a row because I was like, yeah, this is it's definitely the standout. However, I will say the other 2 that really I started to really like is I'm the One and Keeping Secrets.
Which is interesting because I was vibing more with the beginning of the album, and you're vibing more with the end, which is pretty cool.
I did too.
Really?
I was attracted to Keeping Secrets as well.
I love in Got a Hold on Me how there's that middle section where she kind of adds in a little synthesizer and gets a little airy fairy a little bit, and you have the tinkling bells, and then just goes back into that. That's the great classic Christine McVie chorus, and the way the call and response was reminded me a little bit of Hold Me, which was the album that she worked on before this album, Mirage. She was just writing damn good hits.
Like if Hold Me had a baby with a theme song from Bosom Buddies.
Yeah. It'd be Got a Hold on Me.
I kept thinking, keep it to yourself, it's my life. So it just goes with the piano.
Well, next we have a song that I will say probably was not one of my favorites on the album. Who's dreaming this dream? I always felt like it was just a little. I kind of like on this album the more groovy, like I like the songs with the groove, and this song just kind of got a little bit slower than some of the other ones. I bet you guys have nothing to say about this song, do you?
Oh,
go ahead. Go ahead.
One word. The one word I wrote was stinker.
Oh, it is very schlocky a little bit.
I'm not a ballad guy, so it's got to be a killer ballad for me to like it. I'm just.
Well, my only comment was going to be it kind of slowed down.
Yeah, well, definitely slowed down. Now, I remember I got crucified about this on the Mirage podcast, but I've never been a fan of Only Over You from Mirage. I'm out of my mind, and it's only over.
Me either.
I feel like Who's Dreaming This Dream is like if you had a bucket, it'd be in the same bucket. And the same as what's the closing track on Mirage? I wish you were here with me tonight. I feel like the Christine McVie ballad of this breed just never was my favorite. So this is the first time in the album where like I love the first 6 songs. I can listen to those 6 songs over and over and over. And this is where I think I started to fidget a little bit when I was driving. I started checking my phone a little bit, seeing who was texting me.
Other than Songbird, which is not one of my personal favorites, even though it's a huge, huge song in their catalog.
Right.
What would be her best ballad?
Well, I did like Never Make Me Cry on Tusk. I know you didn't love that one. Yeah, she did a lot of mid-tempo, like Sky's the Limit. Like even on In the Meantime.
Sky. That is very mid-tempo Christine McVie.
Right. But as far as ballads, like even on In the Meantime, there wasn't anything quite like this slow kind of ballady thing.
Maybe Oh Daddy is the only other one I
Yeah.
can think of.
But even that, you know what? She
Honey
had some
High.
stuff pre Buckingham Nicks, like Come a Little Closer on Heroes Are Hard to Find was a Christy McVie ballad.
What about the closing song for Time?
Oh,
Wasn't
not the closing song because that's Mick Fleetwood's poem, but the one before it.
Yeah, her last song.
The one she duetted with Stevie.
Yep.
Yeah.
And let's not forget the best Christy McVie ballad of all time actually is Why from Mystery to Me. Oh my God.
You know, I'm finally getting beyond the first CD off of the Super Deluxe. That's a really good song.
When they did it live, once Stevie and Lindsay joined the band and they added their harmonies to the end, like I just listened to that over and over and over.
Yeah, that's really good. That's great lyrics, great harmonies. I was like, wow. So why did that not get put on a record somewhere?
It is. It's on Mystery to Me, so it's on one of the pre-Buckingham Nicks albums.
Okay.
So on that first tour, they were doing some of the older Fleetwood Mac stuff because Lindsay and Stevie weren't established yet. So, but I think like if they could have redone Crystal from Buckingham Nicks, I thought Why was good enough to be redone on an album with the new lineup. I feel like that version with Stevie and Lindsay is just so magical.
That is very interesting.
Now the version of Mystery to Me has like a 2-minute slide guitar solo before the song kicks in, so you kind of gotta like hit fast forward to get to the song. I don't know why they did that.
Well, the same there was like 4 songs that they did like a mini concert, and it was interesting to hear Stevie participating in World Turning.
Oh yeah.
Because you don't hear on the studio version. So she added that little extra spice or wells.
And remember when Christine wasn't in the band and Stevie took on the lead vocals of World Turning, and I just thought that was terrible. No offense, Stevie, but so I remember I saw it live. I'm like, what melody is she singing? Like, is this even World Turning?
Well, at that point, Stevie's voice was much deeper.
Yeah. All right.
In 75, she could hang with it. It really worked.
Yeah. All right, the next song, I'm the One. I'm the One. This is such a freaking good sing along. I love I'm the One. Like it starts with that very like such a 1984 beat. It's this song to me. I don't know if I could ever hear it on a Fleetwood Mac album. This is totally perfect for this album though. And I almost feel like this could have been a hit. Like I feel like it had such a great chorus. It's so of the 1984 time. Am I the only one that loved this song, or did you guys like this one?
Well, I liked it. This was the other one that I was repeating. So I liked the lyrics. I thought they were cute and fun. And
Is she talking about like romantic infidelity or something? I can't remember off the top.
Yes, just it was her play on words.
Right.
It made me start pulling in.
And it's interesting because when you get into this section of the album, Christine didn't write any of these 3 songs. It was Todd Sharp from her band who wrote Who's Dreaming the Stream, I'm the One, and Keeping Secrets. He had a collaborator on a couple.
It blows my mind that she doesn't write all of her songs.
Yeah. But she's probably like, oh, I don't really care. But in the meantime.
Well, they all fit in.
Yeah, they all fit in. And
nothing stands out, like Just Like a Woman or.
Yeah. You know? But even though Christine didn't write all the songs, there was people in her band that did. So, they probably wrote them for her for this album, I would think. The guy that wrote "I'm the One" is the one that co-wrote "Love Will Show Us How" with her. So, I kind of wish this would have been a single. I just think it's a great song. And it's interesting because Stevie Nicks has a song called "I'm Not the One." So Christine has "I'm the One," and Stevie, "I'm not the one." What's that from? In Your Dreams?
Yes.
Is it the Crow?
No, I
That's
thought it.
I'm
You'll
not.
No, it's "You Could Be the One."
know.
That's what I'm thinking of. "You Could Be the One." So I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
All right. Yeah.
"I'm Not the One" or "You Could Be the One" are the two sides of the coin. So next is "Keeping Secrets." It starts with a really interesting kind of guitar riff that's kind of dun, 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 and then it goes into a very 80s "Keeping Secrets." Very, dude, my windows were back down. My phone was back on the seat. These last few songs, I was just cruising along. What do you guys think of this one?
Like it.
Yes.
Thumbs up.
All right, so the album ends with a slow song, which was written solely by Christine McVie. This was not a collaboration. "The Smile I Live For." Lindsey Buckingham did play guitar on this one. He did background vocals. Um, Lindsey also did background vocals on "Who's Dreaming Is a Dream," and you can hear him in there. Um, "The Smile I Live For" had a little bit of that like wispy, atmospheric, like the Christine McVie like background vocals. Kind of how you expect a Christy McVie album to end. It's the same way that Buckingham McVie ended with "Carnival Begins," a much better song in my opinion. Um, but I don't mind "The Smile That Lived For." Do you guys have anything to say about it?
Musically,
I
it's
agree.
great, but
Oh, what's that? I'm sorry. I talked right over you.
I said musically, it's great. It just builds and evolves. Lyrically,
"The Smile."
okay.
Yeah, I think I was checking my phone again by the time we got to the song. Steven, what did you think of this one?
I heard the song "Dreams" in it, like in the chord
Really?
progression at the beginning. Yeah, and that.
Okay.
And I was
Dream.
like singing "Dreams" with it.
Maybe maybe you need to do a Dreams "The Smile I Live For" mashup for YouTube. Well, we did it. The is this one of the shorter podcasts in the Phonogenics series, but maybe it'll be a nice, just like the Christy McVie album is a nice breath of fresh air for us. Maybe for the listeners, they'll be like, a nice, simple, easy breath. But I would love to know what Nathan and Jim think of the album. So hopefully in the comments section they can maybe add some thoughts. But it's hard to rank a Christy McVie solo album for me because I just feel like everything she left us is a little golden treasure of Christine. And this isn't the kind of album that's gonna change the world or start a revolution, but it is the kind of album that maybe will bring a little romance into your life or a little relaxation or a little good vibes. This is definitely the kind of album that I can put on and listen to from beginning to end. Even the songs that aren't my favorites aren't offensive to me at all. And there's nothing that's so bad like I know we keep talking about Jane from Street Angel. I feel like a lot of people. I feel like it's trendy to not like that song in the Stevie Nicks world, but I honestly think it's
I like it.
Oh, you like Jane? What's a song that we can all agree on isn't the best? "Cheaper Than Free."
Yes.
We can work on that one, yeah.
Yeah, we can.
Sold.
Okay, so oh gosh, I don't know what I'd rate this album. I'm struggling a little bit because I just want to give everything Christy McVie did a 10 because I just adore her and think she was such a good energy and such a good spirit on this earth. But I'll give it a 8. I'll give it an 8. It's a nice, pleasant listen. 7, 8, 7.5. What do you guys give this album? Whose
I
dream
don't
is
think
it
I
to
can
be?
rate this album.
You can't rate the album.
I don't think so.
It's just an entity of itself. Alicia, are you able to rate this one?
Well, the way I usually do it is I start counting all the songs that I like
Okay.
and then try to do it mathematically here. Um, But this one's a little bit harder because it's a solid record.
It is
really
solid. And
it is. So the songs that I don't really like, but I could appreciate the musicality. I was enjoying the solos and everything. So I mean, it's kind of a give and take. The
to the
ones that
point of,
really,
oh, I'm so sorry. I keep talking over you. I was just to say really quick, to the point of what you're saying, even the beloved Stevie Nicks albums I love have songs that I do want to skip. Like I never liked After the Glitter Fades. I'm never a huge fan of I Will Run to You or The Nightmare. Or like, you know, Fire Burning. Like there's songs I'm like, oh, gotta get up and switch that one. And there's
Whole
nothing
lot of
like
trouble.
what's that?
Whole lot of trouble.
Down, 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 down. My favorite song.
I actually like that song, but
Oh God, those horns kill me.
The thing I like is she's like, Mike, he went in the guitar, he went in the studio and he's the first one to play it exactly how I played. I'm like, I don't know if that's a good thing, Stevie. Not guilty.
She
Have
can't
mercy.
even get the words right. She's not even close to in the ballpark when she does it live.
Oh yeah.
Somewhere in the background, I go here, go there, a whole lot of trouble. Is the song over yet?
Oh yeah. Not guilty. Have mercy. Alicia, I'm gonna shut my mouth and let you talk. I'm putting myself on mute. In
since you
fact,
guys are having so much fun, it's a
not
whole lot of trouble
guilty.
in here.
So, as you were saying, it's you enjoy the album from beginning to end. It's very consistent.
Yes. I mean, I'm I'm gonna go lower, but I'd probably say 6, but it's because I don't know. I mean, I liked One in a Million, Got a Hold on Me, I'm the One Keeping Secrets. So I easily like half of the record off of 3, 4 listens I've done. And I know probably if I listened to it more, it would go higher. It's a solid record. It really is.
I think, like Steven said, there's a lot of growers on here because
Yeah,
so excited might not
great.
jump out, but like I think it's classic. After I'm giving it
And
a
that's
7.5.
probably why he feels like he can't do a number. And
Right.
I'm kind of in that same boat because there's a lot of meat in here with all the solos and everything. That was what I was running through. It's like,
and it sounds sorry, it sounds like degrading to say, but it's mediocre, but it's really good. It's not mediocre in a bad way.
Right.
I think is Christine McVie's niche. It's like she doesn't write bad songs. She doesn't do a bad job, but I don't think she does a lot of those stellar highs. Like there's no Edge of 17 in her catalog.
Do you think it's
Or
fair to say?
Stand Back.
Do you think it's fair to say it's a little yacht rocky, like a tiny bit remnant of like
Maybe.
the '80s version? Like once we got into like the logins, it kind of. I feel
I
like
can see where you make that comment. I
right.
can see it.
She's just solid.
Well, I
Like she
mean,
puts
this
out
is a
solid.
She's
go ahead,
solid.
sorry.
She's consistent. I'm gonna go with 7.5. I think I probably played this album just as much, if not more, than albums that I've ranked higher, just because it's such an easy listen and not easy in a bad. I know we keep saying like these words, like, but not in a bad way, like not mediocre in a bad way.
Because it sounds so terrible to say that.
Could you hear any of these songs on Fleetwood Mac albums? I couldn't hear all of them, but like,
The big single.
Got a Hold on Me, so you could hear that with
Yeah.
Stevie and Lindsay.
I could maybe see the One in a Million, the one that really
Okay.
or
I
had
guess
a
the
really
challenge has Lindsay singing on it, so that wouldn't be too far of a stretch. Well, Christine, thank you for getting your piano on top of a mountain or a hill and recording an album. Well, any parting thoughts on Christine McVie? I'll pause so we can chat with each other for a second. All right. Well, we will be back with Lindsey Buckingham going insane next month. And thank you for joining us, Jim and Nathan. We missed you. I hope you had fun recording The Visitor and Rick Vito's
Bowling.
solo album. Yeah. Bowling. All right. Thanks to all the Patreon subscribers and YouTube subscribers, and we'll see you next month. Make sure to leave a message in the comments of what this album meant to you. I'd love to hear.